Welcome everyone to the Hollywood Maker. Such a pleasure to have you guys with us again. I'm your host, Claudia Cano Asbjornsen. And today I am so pleased to have someone that I had the fortune of meeting at an event called Podfest earlier this year. And I was so surprised by all the knowledge that I acquired in just 20 minutes that I sat with him. So I am so happy that he accepted our invitation to be our guest today. His name is Gordon Firemark. He is an entertainment attorney that has been practicing for over 30 years. He helps artists, writers, producers, and directors achieve their dreams in the fields of theater, film, television, and new media. Gordon is also, like I said, since I met him at Podfest, he's also producer and host of his own podcast, The Entertainment Law Update, that also helps artists in entertainment industries. And he also is known as Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer. Whew. Now that I said a little bit about you, Gordon, welcome, and tell me, how's it going? Tell me about you right now. We haven't talked in a long time.
Well, in my spare time, after all that, it doesn't sound like there is any, and that's right. Anyway, hi, Claudia. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about what got you into entertainment law, because I think that's a very niche entertainment area that a lot of people don't understand that much, and you are here to be able to help people navigate through the legalities of so much, and everything has changed in the past few years, so we're going to get into that.
Well, that story goes back to when I was 5 years old. I was in kindergarten, and we lived in the Boston area, in Brookline, suburb of Boston. And it was a K through 12 school that I was in. And so I was in kindergarten, and the high school kids were doing their production of Oliver. And they brought the younger kids in to see a dress rehearsal one day. And I was hooked by theater. It just got me excited. And I thought, well, I gotta be involved in that somehow. And so went home and asked the parents, and they encouraged that kind of thing. And jumped to a few years later. I was in middle school. We'd moved out to California by then, and I was getting into some low-grade trouble with my friends, and the school principal just decided to intervene and asked me to run the lights and sound for the school variety show. And that led to the school play, and then that led to being the sound guy in high school and being very involved in theater and working professionally in theater before I finished high school, and started as a theater major in college, and eventually shifted over to radio, TV, and film, with a stop along the way in journalism and fine art photography. So, I was always sort of my nose pointing in the direction of the arts and stuff. But in college, I discovered an aptitude, or actually one of my professors discovered an aptitude for the government regulation and the legal side of things, and she really encouraged me to go to law school. And I didn't take that advice right away, but after about a year out in the cold, cruel world of the entertainment industry, trying to get a job or trying to work in the television industry, I decided to do it and went to law school. So entertainment law was the obvious direction. It was actually harder to find a job as an entertainment lawyer coming out of law school with that background than had I just been a more generalized focus of law. And so, anyway, I ended up out on my own as a lawyer fairly quickly after law school. And it's no turning back, no looking back ever since. So.
Oh, interesting. Let me tell you that. I was a pre-med student, and I went into an elective class in theater, and that was the beginning of the end for me. I fell in love with theater production, and from there I changed my major to TV and film production, and then I just shifted completely. So I knew all my life that I wanted to be a doctor, and I had that track. I had a biology degree and everything, but then a professor was telling me, "Oh, you're taking so many hard classes, take an elective." And, life just brings you to where you're supposed to be, I guess. And that elective was theater. I love theater, so we have that in common. And that was my entrance into the media entertainment area and TV and film. And so interestingly enough, theater kind of gravitates and pulls us in.
I think it's like a virus. Once it's infected you, you never get rid of it.
You cannot. It's another thing I tell people, to be able to work in this entertainment business and the media, you have to be a little bit crazy. There has to be something wrong with you for us to dedicate so many
or
hours.
a lot bit crazy. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like you either love it or you hate it, but there's no middle ground. So anyway, so now that we know a little bit about how you started, tell me a little bit about, so there's so much that we can talk about, right? Because the Hollywood makers were trying to provide resources to people out in the entertainment media that are already there or trying to make it in. And there's so many questions in the legal aspect that we want to keep them informed in, and having you is such a blessing to be able to give them that opportunity. But today, because I promise we will have other conversations, but today I wanted to focus a little bit more on what's happening in the world of AI, right? Because you are dealing with it on your practice daily basis. What's the biggest shift you've seen in the legal world with the upcoming of artificial intelligence?
Well, the biggest shift is the uncertainty, because it's so new and it is breaking ground into new areas of law, or areas of law that nobody had really thought to explore particularly. And it's just the last couple of years that we're starting to see courts ruling on things and government agencies ruling. For example, the Copyright Office here in the US and in most countries around the world, the copyright authorities have concluded that in order to be eligible for copyright protection, a work has to be human authored. If it's not a human, whether it's a monkey or an elephant painting with a paintbrush or a computer that's generating the work, it is not entitled to copyright protection. And that means that anybody who wants to can come along and use it without compensating there's no owner. So that's really the issue. So that's cautionary tale number one is, if you're using these tools, be really thoughtful about use it for parts and pieces, but don't let it do the whole job, because that's not going to be entitled to protection. And then you find yourself having done that work for nothing. So that's one area. The other area is the lots of concerns on the other side, on the inputs. Where is the stuff that these machines are being trained with coming from? And should they have gotten permission from the creators of the books and the pictures and the films and the videos and the audios and all that stuff in order to copy it into the system so they could use it to teach the machine how to create stuff like it? And there are a number of lawsuits going on right now addressing those. Authors, artists, companies that, do in the music industry, lots of them out there doing that. And then, so those are the kinds of concerns that are really permeating the entertainment industry as AI finds its way in. And then, of course, we had strikes last summer.
Yes. How did that affect you?
Well, the industry strikes in 2023 didn't really affect me directly. I mean, there was less work happening because there weren't shows being made and those kinds of things. But, other than needing to be aware of the issues and how they ultimately settled, so when we're making deals, we can spot the issue and make sure our clients are being treated fairly and compensated appropriately, those kinds of things. But good news for writers and actors is the industry has made some deals that allow for those folks to be paid when the AIs are used to do what otherwise would be considered replacing them. So
interesting. I'm pretty sure you heard about this new fake trailer that they created with Henry Cavill, and they did this whole trailer and it's all done with AI and it's obviously fake. What happens? Obviously, I don't know that he will pursue anything with that, because obviously it's more of a promotion, but what happens in cases like that where people are creating this like fake personas or fake content? Can they be sued, or what are the repercussions, or if any, for those people?
Well, the First Amendment has a role here, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and the law historically has handled this by basically distinguishing between commercial uses of celebrities' names and likenesses and those kinds of things from the non-commercial, purely artistic creative. And that's why, we don't need permission in order to make a documentary film about a person, because we're going to show pictures of them and talk about their life, because that documentary or a narrative storytelling film is not considered commercial. But as soon as you cross over into selling something, an advertisement, that's where the law is able to make some restrictions. So freedom of speech is much more broadly applied, almost unequivocally applied, in the artistic, creative, political speech arena. But when it gets into commercial speech, we can put some restrictions on it and balance the property interests or financial interests of the people against the interest of getting the message out, I guess you could say. So in the case of that fake trailer, they're not selling anything real. And so it's purely an exercise of creative something. So I think Henry Cavill would have a hard time with that. Now, there are a couple of kinds of claims that might show up in a situation like that. For example, if he feels that somehow it has disparaged him because maybe he has a reputation for being against those kinds of films, or never wants to hold a gun in a film or something like that, maybe he could bring a case for libel, defamation, saying that it's created a false impression about him that is harmful to his reputation or something like that. But that's a pretty limited scope kind of a thing for a known celebrity. He'd also have to prove that there was sort of actual malice, that they intended to hurt his reputation or knew that it would. So it's not likely that we'll see a claim there. The government, in a number of places, is trying to make a change to this, but the state of Tennessee recently passed a law they call the Elvis Act. I can't remember what the acronym ELVIS is for, but it's convenient. And it's designed to protect musical artists, against having their voices cloned without their permission. There is similar legislation that's sort of been bandied around in a couple of other places, including at the federal level, but this is an area that historically has been handled state by state. And so we have some states that have what we call right of publicity laws and some that don't. And that patchwork is part of the challenge that folks are going to be encountering as this becomes more and more prevalent. There was a recording of the voice of Johnny Cash singing the song Barbie Girl by Aqua.
Yes.
And Johnny Cash was already deceased by the time that came out. So couldn't possibly have been him. But there it is. And it's amusing and certainly an example of what these tools can do. But I can imagine how he or his estate would be unhappy about that kind of thing.
Yeah. So are you seeing cases in your firm right now where you are encountering more stuff with AI, or more protections that you have to give your clients when it comes to that?
So I don't do litigation, so I'm not in court with clients with cases per se, but I negotiate contracts, I make deals, and I try to structure things. And yeah, as I said, I have to be more aware of what the unions have done in this arena to make sure that the deals we're making, depending which side I'm on, aren't crossing over those lines.
Right.
And yeah, we need to be aware, just be able to spot the issues even when the clients may not be involved and covered by a union contract. I'm seeing in the podcasting space contracts where the network or the host or the advertising company will say, we have the right to use the host's voice, real or simulated, in order to generate ads or custom tailor ads. And there's some uses that I'm sure that the guy who's recording the voice for a commercial about a grocery store chain doesn't necessarily want to sit down and read the address of every branch of that grocery store in a city so that they can custom tailor it. But the technology's there to let that happen. And so sometimes we want to let it happen, and sometimes we want to be restrictive, or at least make sure he's getting paid, because it sure sounds like he did a day's work.
Exactly. So that's the new structure of contracts, right? To make sure that they're protected for whenever they would have gotten paid anyway, that they make sure that you get paid regardless, because they're still using you, your image, your likeness, your voice, and all that. And
it's really one of those things where just the addition of, that one word, simulated, gives the producer in that instance, or whoever the buyer is, a much broader latitude of what they can do with the deal. And we have to pay close attention.
What is the best advice that you can give new artists in regards to the protections that they should seek? Two or three things that you can give new emerging filmmakers or emerging actors and people in the industry that they should be on the lookout when, for the future, what they should be looking at?
Well, with respect to the AI, I think you want to be on the lookout to make sure that what you're creating and what you're using to create isn't purely the product of AI. So the script that you decide to produce as a film, either write it yourself or make sure you're working with a writer who is actually writing and not just prompting a computer to generate a script. Because I think ultimately audiences will be able to tell, and it'll have that sort of patina of inauthenticity somehow on that. So I think that's really important. And also, as you use the tools to look, let's face it, we're going to use these tools. Let's not overdo it. Let's make sure we bring and keep the human touch in the equation. On the business and legal side, of course, let's make sure we're protecting our stuff, using whatever means start to emerge to make sure that if you don't want it ingested into the AI universe, say so. Be careful about where the stuff lives on the internet and things like that. And make sure our contracts are clear about these kinds of things so that the distributor of your film doesn't inadvertently just, make it available where they're not supposed to, things like that. So it requires a new level of vigilance that lawyers like me have to really be paying attention to. I'd say talk to a lawyer is probably the first line of defense.
Yes, and that's a good thing because we'll make sure to give all the information of how to reach out to Gordon, because I'm sure people have questions and they can go to your podcast too as well to get more info. But in case our people are looking for guidance, it's always good to know that there's someone out there that knows and understands that stuff, firsthand. What is the biggest transition you've seen, thinking about back 10 years, just 10 years, not even that much, 10 years ago to now? What is the biggest transition you've seen in the media and entertainment industry?
Well, I think that technology generally has advanced by leaps and bounds. I mean, the fact that you and I can do what is basically a TV talk show from our respective homes or offices and create this kind of media is tremendous. And it was still a dream 10 years ago. When I was in school studying film and TV, we were talking about, $1 million studio to make this kind of thing happen. And now you can make it for $1,000. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Other advancements in the last decade, I think the contractual side, the stuff that I'm dealing with as a lawyer, has had to keep up with the technology and make sure that we're addressing these kinds of concerns before they become just a part of the fabric of things, because you can't unring a bell. Once the thing is out there, there's no stopping it. So we want to try to catch it as early as possible and make sure it's being used properly and effectively. And we're not tying hands too tightly, but at the same time, we're not giving people free reign to do anything at all that they want without making sure that our clients are compensated. So.
Right. And thinking about the fact that, obviously we've been talking about AI and all the changes that have come about, where do you see obviously you don't have a crystal ball, we all wish we could, but in your perspective, where do you see this transition going? What are I wouldn't want to say pitfalls, but what are the safeguards that you tell people for the future? Because everything changes exponentially, and the technology side, especially with AI now, whatever took 10 years, now it's taking a year to change. So True. Where do you see the future of this going, and how do people safeguard themselves?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I don't know what the future holds exactly. I think that, as you said, technology is moving faster and faster. The speed of change is increasing. And so I guess paying attention is the most important thing, and looking for the opportunities, frankly. I think People who win in the long run in business in any career really are the ones watching for opportunities. Famously, Bing Crosby invested in a videotape company very early on in the days of television, knowing that it was going to be the wave of the future. And it made him a very, very wealthy man besides his recording and acting career. So, this is not new. Pay attention, look for those opportunities, and try to be there when lightning strikes. I think, I guess we could guess, is there going to be some kind of holographic technology where now the actors are actually performing the scene in your living room when you're watching something? Or, that could be a lot of fun, but again, we're gonna have these legal issues, and honestly, the legal side of it has always been dealing with it. Not just legal, but industry generally. When radio came in, the sheet music producers and publishers were worried. When television came along, the radio folks got when film came along, the radio and TV folks, I should say, the radio folks got involved, and the television put the film industry on its heels, and so here we are again with a new set of technologies that are sort of disrupting and shaking things up, and ultimately that's good for us as a society. We're advancing technologically, we're creating amazing things, and hopefully it won't just be for entertainment, and people will start using some of the energy that goes into these things for cleaning up the environment and advancing the cause of human rights and those kinds of things as well. We can hope.
Yes, let's hope they use the technology for the advancement of the human race, not the opposite. And I wanted to ask you, I always have the opportunity to sit with my guests because I believe that we are living in such a difficult time with everything that's being thrown at us from so many angles, from technology and work and news and everything that happens around us. And I always want to know, and I always want to ask advice from our people that are making it, that are the true Hollywood makers, right? You are making it in the industry. How do you stay focused and not stress-free, because you're never going to be stress-free, but how do you manage the stress to take care of yourself? How do you keep up with that?
Well, I think with age, I've gained some perspective on this, and the idea that this too will pass is always in the back of my mind. It's just another thing I'm going to go through. And my goal when I'm dealing with something stressful or challenging is to take some lessons away from it. How can I avoid this in the future, or deal with it when it comes up again, or something like that? But ultimately, I think that whenever you're dealing with something, and usually what we talk about when we say stress is there's some sense of overwhelm, or just that I have no control over what's happening to me in the moment. And while it may seem that's the case, it's really not the case. You always have control over at least something, and that might just be how you react and how you respond. So trying to remain positive and having a lifting, optimistic approach to things and view of things is a good start. Telling yourself, hey, there's lessons here, just pay attention. Also saying, hey, ignore the BS. My drama teacher in high school had on his clipboard a little sticker on which he had written the words "non illegitimi carborundum," which in Latin, well, his translation is "don't let the bastards grind you down." And I think that kind of an attitude and finding a little humor certainly helps. But ultimately, when you're faced with something really, really big, remember, you don't eat an elephant in one bite. You one mouthful at a time. So if you're inclined to eat an elephant anyway. So take it in small steps and just...
This is the cake. You can eat the whole cake, but you can't eat it all at once.
Yeah. So just take it one bite at a time. Take things and do one thing that makes a little bit of a difference. If you're struggling with something, give yourself permission to take a break and step away from it too, just as long as you promise yourself you'll come back and finish as well.
Right. That's great. That's a great way to see things. I'm glad that you have so much perspective in that regards, and it's a great...
You're calling me old.
I don't think, but
no.
The fact that you came from giving all this advice kind of defeated my next question to you, but I'll still ask it, is what advice would you give all the emergent filmmakers that are out there? Like advice as somebody that works in the entertainment industry, but more importantly, because you have all this experience and background, what's the best advice that you would give them?
Well, I will say that I think that making art, making media, making content is hugely important for us as a society and as a culture, or as cultures. It's how we grow and expand our understanding of each other. And so I guess the most important advice I want to give is don't stop making stuff just because it's hard. The fact that something's hard, the fact that you're afraid of things, that's a sign that it needs doing. And get out and do it. Make stuff. Be creative. If you're not in it because you have to be in it, because then you choose another career. But creativity is something that, as you and I said earlier, it's something that gets in your bones, and you can't not do it. So follow that lead, I guess.
Awesome. And what's the best advice that you have received in your career?
Well, I think that non illegitimate carborundum is pretty good advice.
Awesome. So I'm about to wrap it up, but I always ask the guests if there's something that you want to leave the audience with that we didn't get to discuss, or that I might have not asked you, but you think it's important that they stay with, or that they hear from you.
I would say, yeah, I think that it's important for us all to look inward a little bit, to do some meditation, some thinking beyond just what's in front of us. Yes, we have to focus on, the one bite at a time approach, but at the same time, having a big picture view, keeping your eye on the goals and what's in store long range. That's how you achieve great things, is by taking those steps incrementally, sometimes very bold and sometimes very mundane. But that's what you do. You want one step at a time to get to your destination, and open your mind to your own inner thoughts. So often we're sort of closed off from that. And your instincts are going to be good if you let them do their job.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gordon. This has been so insightful. Thank you for all the information. I am going to share with the audience via video, obviously, how to reach you. But for the people who are listening to the podcast, what's the best way if people wanted to see your podcast or ask you questions or learn more about you? What would be the best way for them to do that?
Well, the name is Gordon Firemark. I'm fortunate that Firemark is an easy one to find, and I'm really the only one. There's a few insurance brands out there related to it, but you can go to gordonfiremark.com for information about my courses and trainings and forms and templates. Firemark.com is my law practice blog and website, and the podcasts are called Entertainment Law Update, and Legit Podcast Pro is another one that I do on YouTube. So you can find me on most social media just by searching for my name.
Awesome. And I hope that we get our guests and our listeners to send us questions that they might have for you, so that next time that we bring you up, we can bring other topics, not necessarily AI, but anything else that Gordon might be able to enlighten us with, because obviously there's such a vast amount of information in the entertainment law and advice that you can give people that might not have access to a lawyer, because they're just starting out, and we want to help them not make those initial mistakes that we make because we have no knowledge, right? So thank you so much, Gordon, for your time. I know you have to go back to do your stuff, so I don't want to take too much more of your time. To our viewers and to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the Hollywood Makers. Make sure that you subscribe, that you like, that you listen to us, and keep being part of this community of the Hollywood Makers. Till next time.